Welcome to the 2022 Budget Review. My name is Sally Frazer, and I am your Ford County Homeowners Association Treasurer. Today I'll be giving you some information on the 2021 financials, both year-to-date September and a full-year forecast, and an overview of the 2022 budget. We are handling the presentation in the same manner we did last year. I will give the presentation virtually, and there will be an email at the end to which you can address your questions. On November 4th, we will hold a virtual town hall meeting at 6:30 p.m., and I will answer those questions, plus any others asked at the meeting. We are doing it this way for two reasons. It allows those concerned with COVID to listen to the budget presentation and not have to come into a crowded room. And we believe we reached more residents using this format last year than we did holding the meeting in person. So let's get started. I want to quickly go over the agenda. I'm going to say thanks to the major contributors, and in the budget process there are a number of major contributors. I'm going to talk about 2021, where we stand, the operating budget revenues, and the operating budget expenses. Then we'll talk about the year-end forecast and the carryover that comes from that. Then I'll talk to capital expense review. So, just a point at this time, the operations is about 80% of our budget, our assessment, and the capital expense is about 20%. Then we're going to move into 2022 guidelines and assumptions. First we'll talk about operations revenues, and we'll talk about operations expenses. Then I'm going to talk about the 2022 capital reserve budget. Then we're going to show the comparison between 2022 and 2021, operations, capital, and Forest Colony Drive. All three of these parts add to be our total budget for Forest Colony. Then we're going to talk about how do we pay for the increases. As you might guess, there are increases this year, as there are increases every year. And in the end, we'll talk about drainage pipes, what percent we are completed, and revenues and expenditures through September 30th, 2021. The last slide will be questions and answers. It will show you how the email address for you to forward your questions. Okay, the major contributors. The Finance Committee is every year they take the lead in putting the budget together. The list of the people is presented there. I particularly want to thank Nancy Mull, the chair, for helping me out with a number of things this year, being treasurer. In addition, I would like to give a shout out to Joanne Gora. She was the chair of the budget subcommittee, and she had started her work, I think, early in the spring, and it still hasn't completed until the board finally passes the budget, approves the budget. Also, thanks to Bob Morrell. He is the keeper of our capital repair and replacement model, a sophisticated computer model for all our capital items, and produced all the budget worksheets that we used this year for the budget. I want to thank the standing committees. In particular, three of them provide most of the budget material. Roads and Project Maintenance, chaired by Jack Vanderlinden. Facilities, chaired by Ray McCaskey. And Security, chaired by Linda DeSife. They provided detailed budgets for the respective departments. The management agent, always key players in our budget process. They have the experience, they have the knowledge of the line items, and they do their best to make the process flow well. And finally, my fellow board members. As I said, they ask the hard questions. They provide their points of view, and there are a number of points of view. But we can reach the needed compromises to create our 2022 budget. Okay. So, where do we stand year-to-date, September 30th, 2021, in revenues? Over budget. When we budgeted for 2021, we assumed a reduced level of construction similar to our 2020 experience. The beginning of 2021 was slow, but by June, construction took off. As a result, the construction impact fee was well over budget. You can see the $11,875. This is a fee paid at the time of application to build a house. It covers the costs associated with large vehicles using our roads. Also favorably impacted by the increased housing starts were the ARC fees. Together, these brought in $45,000 more than budgeted. In addition to new house construction, there was considerable turnover in existing houses. We usually see about 150 to 175 homes sold each year. This year, there will be more than 200. which directly contributed to the additional $32,543 in disclosure package revenue. Other highlights were service fees, which include the FCC, Ford County, Country Club contract and speeding infractions, and our category of other brought in $12,663, which was a remaining marketing fee from the Westport properties. Liens and legal fees relates to properties in arrears on their assessments. The assistant manager, Sally Wall, has worked diligently to reduce this number. As the owners pay off their back assessments, late charges, and legal fees, we recognize the lien and legal fees expenses being paid. Currently, we are down to 10 properties in arrears, which represents 0.3% of our properties versus an industry standard of 2.5%. We are certainly a viable community. As a bottom line, the total favorability as of September 30th in revenues is $117,509. Now let's look at expenses. We look at our expenses by expense center, and the 5 of them are listed on this chart. Administrative expense, well, architectural review committee, excuse me, let me start at the top, is over budget by $175. On the prior page, we said they brought in more than $45,000 worth of revenue over budget. We'll give them $175. Administrative expense, primarily rated to timing. The payment of the bonus pool was budgeted in October, but it's not yet been paid. It equates to approximately that $13,000. There are many expenses, however, under that category that are plus and minus, but they average out. Roads and project maintenance, under budget by $56,000 plus. The favorability is primarily from storm salaries, snow removal, and group insurance. Security is under budget by $42,481, primarily due to training costs, and group insurance. Total of all operating expenses to date, we are $110,502 favorable. So through September, when you add our revenues less expenses, we have favorability of $228,011. We're forecasting year-end favorability of $147,000. Why isn't it the $228,000, you might ask? Our revenues come in, our assessments are paid quarterly on a regular basis evenly. However, the fourth quarter is one of our busiest months for expenses, for activity going on in the community. And we will not maintain that $228,000. So our forecast is $147,000. I'd like you to remember that number because it will show up again. Okay. Next, we're going to look at capital. Again, operations we just talked about was 80% of our budget, capital was 20%. There are 4 things of interest, at least to me, in this capital budget. The first is under site work. You'll notice that we're $190,000 over budget. There were 2 things that contributed to this. This year we had problems with micropools behind the timber walls. Before coming to Ford's Colony, I didn't know there were micropools and I didn't know there were timber walls, but I now understand that there are. And what they're used for is to monitor water after, or meter water after heavy storms, so that we don't create erosion and problems with flooding. We had noticed that the micropools were, in fact, becoming eroded because we had all the rains in the past couple of years. So we had an emergency repair that cost almost $50,000. This was unbudgeted. We also have overspent this year on LED lighting fixtures. The board approved the purchase of bringing forward this lighting from 2022 to 2021. We had it budgeted in 2022, but the vendor has told us there's going to be a price increase in 2022. So the board did a resolution approving the purchase and bringing forward the lighting fixtures to this year. Another line item of interest is paving, $92,000 favorable. That's directly related to deferring rejuvenation of our roads. We have looked at the roads and realized that the rejuvenation process would not be profitable to us to use this year, and we have pushed it off for a year. Operating equipment. We are budgeted to purchase new vehicles in 2021. Although the vehicles need to be replaced, the timing is not good. There's a lack of supply of vehicles we need, and the price is higher than usual. All the vehicles will last another year, at least 6 months to a year, and we'll budget them again for 2022. So overall, the total, we're over budget by $21,923. Okay, let's turn to 2022. Our assumptions, I have guidelines and assumptions, those which are revenue related. The first is that favorability from 2021 of $147,000 will be carried forward to offset 2022 costs. You saw that 147 on one of the previous slides. There will be 2986 property owners who pay the annual assessment. Gate card charges to vendors will increase by $7,000. Chocolate Colony advertising income will increase by $2,000. Income from the RV boat storage lot, Marriott, and security fees will remain constant. There will be 200 resales, which impacts disclosure packages and transfer fees. There will be 29 plans submitted for new homes, which impacts ARC review fees, extension fees, and construction impact fees. Interest on receivables and liens and legal fees will be significantly reduced as the properties in arrears have been significantly reduced. Now let's talk about the assumptions for the expenses. Here's the elephant in the room. It's the labor rate increase. We are budgeting an increase of 11% in labor rate and adding 2.5% more for a budget pool as needed. This year, as you all know, labor rates have gone crazy. Vendors who use the same labor that we do are stealing, quote unquote, stealing our labor force. We cannot compete with what's going on. We start our folks in the maintenance area around $11.50. We start our folks in the security around $13.50. This is dollars per hour. Currently, the James River Landscaping and Fan Landscaping, Mr. Fan, are both offering between $16 and $19 per hour for people off the street or with a little bit of experience. And certainly the people that work for us, that's the kind of experience they're looking for. This number is going to have the major impact on the budget, and you'll hear more about it later. Other assumptions. Gas prices will increase by more than 50% compared to the 2021 budget. PVC costs, which are used for signage, would increase by 25%. Other commodities and vendor services would increase by 5%. And in fact, most vendor services are increasing by at least 10. We'll have no operating projects for 2022. Normally, we have a few minor operating projects in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 every year. Things like new racking for the warehouse or a new shed or something along that line. We have put them all off. There's nothing critical that we're putting them off, but we have none budgeted in 2022. We have an addition of a part-time security staff to handle speeding and RFID issues. We have additional computer support for upgraded systems. We're in a major 5-year program to upgrade our computer systems. And health insurance is going to increase by 10%. These are our expense assumptions. Okay, now let's turn to 2022 versus 2021 capital reserve expenses. As you'll notice, roads are pretty much constant year to year. Site, that is drainage, trails, and ponds, reduced by $103,000. Primarily, that's the reduction for the LED lighting that we pulled forward into 2021 and spoke about previously. Recreation shows a reduction as well. There were larger projects in 2021 that include replacing the partition wall in the swim and tennis building and the playground shade structure. They are not being repeated, obviously, in 2022. Security went up $44,000. That's due to new gate mechanisms which will be installed at James Bray, St. Andrews, Firestone, and Eagles Cliff. Community Services has a reduction, and that's due to the fact that in 2021 we replaced roofs at the CSB building and the mechanics shop. That's not needed to be done, obviously, again in 2022. So the total budget went from $1,071,000 to $926,000. But our required contribution went from $1,289,000 to $1,323,000. Why is that? Our capital contribution, our capital replacement and repair model averages and smooths our assessment from year to year. So let me give you a very simplistic example. But say we had only 3 projects in our capital reserve budget. One of them was each one's for $1 million. One was scheduled for next year, and 2 were scheduled for 2 years prior, 2 years after. So if we didn't smooth, next year we would pay $1 million, and in 2 years with that year we would have to pay $2 million. Instead, our model averages, smooths the cost over a period of time, so we don't have these peaks and valleys. Instead, we would pay $1.5 million in next year and $1.5 million in the third year, averaging across the years. That's what's happening here. Even though we're spending less this year, the averaging of the model, looking for more years in the future, about 3 or 4 years in the future, we have high expense years. And we're building the funds now so that we can afford to pay for that with no peaks and valleys in your assessment. The last thing I want to talk about is the capital contribution fee. We've talked about it in the Talk of the Colony and in last emails. This is where it would be applied against the $1,323,109 to reduce that part of your assessment. Okay. Next. So now let's look at the total budget from 2022 proposed budget to 2021 actual budget. ARC increased approximately $43,000. The labor percent in this department is small, and the increase is due primarily for part-time IT support, for our upgraded systems, general insurance, and our contracted management fee increased. Facilities increased approximately $27,400. $23,000 of that is labor related. RPM, roads and project maintenance, almost $210,000 is the increase, and labor is approximately $193,000 of that. In security, increases approximately $126,000, which labor increase is $140,000, but it's been partially offset by a reduction of $20,000 in group insurance based on 2021 actual usage. So the total labor impact in the first 4 items in our expense centers in our operating budget is $362,000 out of the $406,000 increase, about 89% of the increase. Capital we talked about just previously on the other page, and Fort County Drive is less than 1%. It has a 2.5% increase. Fort County Drive is a maintenance contract that we have a shared maintenance agreement we have with Fort County Country Club, Marriott, and the real estate office at the beginning of the drive. We all share in the expenses to maintain Fort County Drive, although the Homeowners Association owns the drive. Okay, the page that you're probably most interested in. How do we pay for the increases? At the current level of assessments, that is our 2,986 properties times our current dues, which are $1,964, would give us a pot of $5,864,504. The carryover that we've talked about before from 2021 brings us another $147,000. We get fees from facilities, security, and ARC, review fees for new properties, from facilities use of the S&T, Talk of the Colony, from security, gate card fees, etc. We in fact increased them $52,000 this year. So our total revenue before the assessment increase would be $6,561,640. Our total budgeted expenses we saw before is $6,941,113. That gives us a shortfall of $379,473. Therefore, we need an increase to our full year assessment of $128 for the year, or $32 for the quarter. Our 2022 assessment will become $20.92 versus this year's $19.64, or $23 a quarter versus this year's $4.91. It is an increase of 6.5%. I'm just going to repeat these numbers because they are substantial. Our shortfall this year in our budgeting is $379,473. We will need a 6.5% increase to the assessments in order to make that up. This is not a budget that is filled with fat. As we said, we did no operating expenses. We have trimmed as much as we could trim. The labor costs are the significant issue in this year's budget. Okay, let me turn to our drainage pipes. Our drainage pipe project is well underway. I'm sure you've seen the trucks around your neighborhoods making the either replacement or lining. I like this chart, so I brought it, had it included. Our pipe replacement is percentage completed is 19.5%. In fact, our pipe lining is higher than the 50.8 the chart shows. We're moving along very well. It is pretty much according to schedule. We had built into the contract that the pipe lining should be 50% completed by October, and the remainder completed early in 2022. Pipe replacement, it was known that we were going to work on that at year end, and it will be going into full force starting now. So you'll be seeing the trucks for months to come. Now, let's just look a little bit at some of the numbers. For revenue, we had an assessment in 2020 and an assessment in 2021. The $1,195,200 and the $597,600. We received grants that the MA applied for of $125,820. Total revenue that we've received so far is $1,918,620. Our expenditures in 2020 were $354,000, and in 2021 through September 30th are $768,000. For total expenditures of $1,120,000 and a remaining amount from the original assessments and grants of $796,000. Our total budget through 2027 is $3,347,645, and we are on target for that. In addition, we have grants which have been applied for in 2022 of another $97,500, which will give us some room to find problems and be able to take care of them without having to worry about an assessment. And in fact, right now, we have no intention of having additional assessments on the drainage pipe project. The finances are under control. I cannot promise that some crisis will not occur, but at this point, we're totally under control. So, the two things to take away from this year's budget presentation are there will be an increase in your dues, $128 per year, and that there will be no special assessment for drainage pipe in 2022. So now, if you have any questions, I'm sure I answered most of them, but if you have any questions on this year's budget presentation, please direct them to budgetquestions@fchoa.net. I will answer by email and go through all the questions on the November 4th webinar, Town Hall, at 6:30 p.m. So, at this point, I thank you for listening to my presentation, and I welcome any questions. Please have a good day. Thank you.